The virtual CISO moment is brought to you by vCISO Services. vCISO Services' mission and calling is to provide quality cybersecurity and information security consulting and expertise for small and mid-sized businesses. While they are a leading provider of qualified and experienced virtual CISOs, they offer much more. Check them out at vcisoservices.com. I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment. We've got Leon Kuperman here joining us today. Leon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
Very good. So Leon is the co-founder and CTO of Cast AI, formerly a vice president of security products, OCI, at Oracle. His professional experience spans across tech companies, such as IBM, Truition, and HostedPCI, and founded and served as the CTO of Zenedge, an enterprise security company protecting large enterprises with a cloud WAF and a whole bunch of other things. So, Leon, appreciate you joining us. Would love to hear your story about how you got into IT and cyber, why you did it, because it's sometimes a pretty rough field to get into, and what led you ultimately to become an entrepreneur and to start up Cast AI.
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. I think I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I think I had one real job at IBM before I went off on my own. But I wasn't a security person, so I was a software engineer by trade. Graduated in computer science, and went to work on a whole bunch of software products. Started at IBM. And my focus at that time was actually e-commerce. So back in 1998 or whenever it was, online transaction processing was fairly new. And I was fortunate enough to be on those teams that brought some of the first e-commerce adopters online. And then my cyber journey started when I was attacked in one of those e-commerce companies. Right? I was acting as the chief technology officer for a large online seller. And it was before Bitcoin. So the ransomware wasn't even a Bitcoin ransomware. It was a Western Union request. And it was a DDoS attack that said, look, we're going to bring down your whole online operation until you pay us $5,000 USD and wire the money to Siberia. I couldn't make this up in a more, it was such a dramatic event. We were, doing about, in the 7-figure range per day of revenue, and every day we were down was costing the business. And my CEO was like, "You're not paying this ransom. You got to figure it out from a tech perspective." So we actually ended up paying the ransom in the end. And the most amazing part of the story is at the end, the attacker emails me. This is all over email. He's like, "You've been such a great customer. Give me a couple of competitors. We'll attack those for free." I'm like, "No, I don't want any services from you."
I'm sorry for laughing, and I don't want to say that's awesome, but that kind of surprised me. And I was having a sip of my cup of coffee at that moment, so I'm glad I didn't choke. So, all right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So all good business ideas come from a need, right? So necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And that's when the idea of Zenedge was born. And it was designed to be a online web application firewall in the cloud. This was right around the time where Cloudflare was starting. Akamai was still very nascent in their capabilities with DDoS. They just starting to think about buying Prolexic. And the idea for Zenedge was born. And we went off and built that company.
That's awesome. And then from there?
So Oracle, so we were pretty fortunate in that Oracle ended up acquiring the Zenedge technology to integrate into their cloud. And it does have a bridge into kind of the Cast business, which I'll tell you about in a second. But because we deployed all Zenedge nodes in AWS across the world, around the world, in every region, it was quite expensive to run. The cost of goods sold was pretty expensive. And we had this kind of ongoing tension between onboarding very large customers onto the platform and our cloud bill. And that was the necessity that spawned the idea for Cast AI, which we can talk about later. But in between then, I did another cyber gig, company called Cujo AI, which was a online security defense system from home users, because the idea is that we have lots of enterprise software for protecting customers, but very few people can protect their webcams and their home environments, which are so easily hackable. And Cujo ended up getting integrated with the Comcast and Charter router stacks, so that was great. And then, so those were two kind of cyber companies. But at Oracle, I had the opportunity to run a very large customer-facing product organization for security products. So everything that OCI sells to customers for security was under kind of my umbrella, which was an amazing experience, both culturally and scaling of teams. So that's kind of the breadth of my cyber background.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I think that, sometimes I always ask folks what they think that the greatest threat to small and mid-sized businesses in the cyberspace is. And a lot of times people will say ransomware, but people don't realize that there has been that model around for many, many years. I think you said that it was back to 98, except for that back then. It wasn't Bitcoin. It was being paid Western Union. And so very interesting that has been around for a while. And right after we take a very short break, we'll come back and we'll talk about some threats to small and mid-sized businesses and really then dive into Cast AI. Bitdefender provides cybersecurity solutions with leading security, efficacy, performance, and ease of use to small and medium businesses, mid-market enterprises, and consumers. Guided by a vision to be the world's most trusted cybersecurity solutions provider, Bitdefender is committed to defending organizations and individuals around the globe against cyber attacks to transform and improve their digital experience. So, Leon, I don't know if you're going to say that the most significant threat is ransomware, but I would be curious to get your input right now as to what the most significant threat to particularly small and mid-sized businesses are from a cybersecurity perspective.
Yeah, Greg, I'll just mention I'm running Bitdefender on my machine right now, so it was pretty cool to see that ad.
Oh, that's awesome! And we didn't even plan that.
Yeah. Like, look, if you're running a Mac, there's it's one of the lighter weight endpoint detection pieces of software you can run. So anyway, for my little 2-cent endorsement is worth. But going back to your question on threat, I think the threat landscape has actually changed a lot, and I'll tell you what I think the looming threat is now. People are particularly susceptible to social engineering. Social engineering is a laborious task to do at scale, or was a laborious task to do at scale. With large language models like ChatGPT and Bard, it's becoming a lot easier to create. Imagine I can load in context into ChatGPT everything I know about Greg Schaefer, and then ask the bot to create realistic looking sites that you are likely to interact with, and then put those sites up automatically with something like AutoGPT. Now, I don't want to give criminals any ideas, but they're already thinking about it in these contexts anyway. So the real threat is that generative AI can create social engineering at scale across millions of people. It's already been a massive problem for banks, for example, for financial institutions. There's already a certain percentage of fraud that occurs. But I think the social engineering aspect of bank fraud and other financial fraud will significantly increase as these social engineering attacks become faster and smarter at the same time.
Well, we traditionally, as security practitioners, have told people the basic instructions, if you will, to not make yourself a victim are to look at the phishing email, look for bad grammar, look for out of band notifications, or is this out of the behavior of like what you would get from someone? But now it sounds like that basically all of those teaching instructions really are going to have to go out the window. So what is what is any business to, how could they defend against something like that?
Well, I think it's obviously becoming a harder problem for defenders, but we've seen announcements from Microsoft and from Google around generative AI tooling for their security offerings, right? So we're going to have to get faster and better at looking at phishing emails and social engineering, phishing attacks through like impersonated websites. But the problem just gets harder because attackers just have to be right a few times, a handful of times. As defenders, we have to be right 100% of the time, or we have a security breach. So it's an uphill problem. I'm not sure. I think my gut feeling is that whoever can leverage these AI models most effectively ends up kind of taking the lead, whether it's a defender or attacker, we don't know yet.
And of course, AI is really being leveraged in so many different areas, ways, shapes, and forms. And if I understand correctly, that's one of the things that that's really the foundation of Cast AI, that you're using AI to help to optimize compute resources. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So our whole premise is, we have a couple of premises for the business. The first one is we believe the world is moving to containerization. So like most applications will be deployed in some form of container. And if that's true, if our bet is true, then we're taking a bet that Kubernetes is going to be the kind of end state platform, or some cousin of Kubernetes will be the end state platform for container management. What that gives us, if we make those two assumptions, is we have rules of engagement, meaning Kubernetes is a well understood control plane. The APIs are well understood. The rules of those objects inside of the ecosystem are well understood, which means we can teach a computer to play that game. So rather than having human beings administer nodes and pods and where all of those things go and the rules behind deployments, we can allow a lot of that to be automated. And what that means is we're not taking jobs away from DevOps engineers. We're elevating them to work on higher order, more important business tasks, and leaving the low level kind of machine level or infrastructure management to the computer. And as a result, we're faster at it because the machine is driving, and we're much more cost effective. So one of the benefits is DevOps time, because we all have the shortage of those resources. Right. But the other benefit is that we're able to make smarter real-time decisions based on market supply and demand, and give you only the infrastructure you need in an ephemeral way, which just drops your cloud bill drastically.
So this is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. And as far as if I were to say that if I had to pick an area of information security that I'm the weakest, it's definitely cloud security. And part of that, I think, is based on the way how I have progressed in my career. Cloud is not something that was around 20 years ago, for example. So can you give me like a simple real world example how this helps? I know you talked about that in general it can help DevOps being much more efficient because they're not really working on the nuts and bolts of some of the tasks, and that can free them up to do more of the stuff that they're really paid to do. But a real world business example to give me a picture, is that possible?
Yeah, let me give you an example from a pharmaceutical customer that, and I won't give the name, just to protect their identity. But so they want to run simulations across millions of what they call these patient records, virtual patients, right? So they want to run a mathematical simulation that's written in R or MATLAB or maybe Python. They have to suck in the patient records, and it's batch job based, right? So their scientists or their data scientists have a choice. They can try to run those models immediately, and that's what they do now. They just run them right now, and whatever the cost is what the cost is for what they call on-demand computers in the cloud. So if you're not familiar with the nomenclature, basically on-demand means there's a list price, you pay per hour, when you don't need it, you shut it off, right? Mm-hmm. But we have a better mechanism where, because these clouds all have excess inventory, they offer customers a severe discount. That severe discount is called spot pricing, but it comes with a caveat that we can take that computer away from you within 2 minutes notice. So imagine you're in the middle of running thousands of computers in a batch processing, and then some of those computers go away. It's chaos, basically. So right. We manage that, and we do it in two ways. First of all, we tell the customer, look, if you're willing to wait for Sunday night at 3 a.m., whatever the time frame is, this will be 70% cheaper. And we know that because we have price predictive algorithms that are running against those markets. So the customer now has a kayak-like experience for their flight. They can go now and pay more, They can go on Sunday or Saturday and pay less, or whenever it is, Friday night. And then the second thing we do is, as those interruptions occur, we use AI to understand the interruption patterns, and we automatically replace the infrastructure under the covers. It's something at the resolution of 15 seconds. It's not anything a human could ever keep up with.
Okay, so sometimes, and I have to admit, sometimes I sort of like play dumb to ask questions because I know that sometimes some of the listeners and viewers are going to have the same question. And I was not playing dumb with that one. I was being dumb, but that makes complete sense. And so it's not just an efficiency saving as far as the DevOps go. It's an actual, could be a hugely, I think you said like 70% cost savings there.
Yeah. We have some customers that are pretty well optimized and they may only save 30 or 40%. And then other people who are sandbagging, you know the term, like every engineer puts a little bit on top for a resource perspective. And before you know, you have infrastructure that's 5x the size that it needs to be, because no one wants to get woken up in the middle of the night for a downtime issue because there's not enough compute resource.
Well, sure. I mean, that's how in Star Trek, that's how Scotty said that he keeps his reputation as a miracle worker. He just, has a fudge factor in there, pads it all up and all that. So, okay. So it is pronounced Cast AI, right?
That's right.
And you all started in 2018. Do you have a specific, you mentioned healthcare, do you have a specific vertical that you cater to, or are you basically any vertical?
So we started the business in 2020. I think it was maybe incorporated a little earlier than that, but I joined in 2020, and
I misread the website wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So the business is just we're coming to our third birthday, if you will. It's grown dramatically, and we have customers that span most geographies and most industries. And only recently have we started have the larger organizations like in the Fortune 100 have they started to realize that they need automation. They need to kind of move away from these manual practices in order to get to the economies of scale that they need. And Greg, this is the perfect time for our business because everyone is looking at the cloud bill. If you look at the AWS kind of the earnings call, their last earnings call, Andy Jassy basically said, look, all of our customers are looking to figure out how to save money in the cloud. And that's true across all cloud providers. So it's kind of the perfect storm for us where we have an economic downturn. We have a lot of waste in cloud resources, and we have an automation solution that's going to help customers with that problem.
And so is this something that the smaller side of the business spectrum can use? And where I'm coming from with that is some of the folks that we work with, they're relatively small organizations, but as part of them being small and efficient, they heavily leverage, like, say, AWS or I mean, so these are folks that are already stressed with regards to resources as it is. Is this something that would potentially benefit them, or is it more for, like, say, mid-sized markets, mid-sized companies?
Yeah, rule of anyone can use our tool, and we have a freemium offering. You can sign up and get all of the reporting features at no cost. So and the sign up, you don't even have to talk to a salesperson to sign up, which is fantastic. That was always one of my wishes with vendors. But I would say if your cloud bill is kind of anywhere north of, let's call it $5,000 to $10,000 a month, you can benefit from the solution. If it's kind of south of that, meaning like lower than $5,000, like it might be relevant for you to save $500 a month, but that's really like not the core focus. We're trying to save in the, in the large kind of hundreds of thousands of dollars a month for customers.
Excellent. Okay. Well, no, I really appreciate that because not only myself, but my fellow virtual CISOs, it's the same boat. We deal with customers that probably are in the at least 5 to 10K per month of expenses using cloud services, but aren't aware of this sort of thing. So I think that they could benefit as well too. You mentioned in the beginning of the podcast that you pretty much have always been an entrepreneur all of your life, and I'm sort of the other way around. I only got into this kind of kicking and screaming. It was a calling for me, but I've only been doing the entrepreneurship for 6 years, and I will admit, I wish I'd done it sooner because there is nothing like working for yourself. First of all, I just absolutely love it. But between that and developing a new product, which has a lot of promise, and just being in cyber in general, it's got to be quite stressful. So I always like to ask folks, because, well, first of all, I think it's important that we all step away. We can't be working 24/7. We're going to burn ourselves out. Most of us. Some of us, I think, are Supermen. I don't know. But what's one thing that you do to help decompress?
Yeah. And I will tell you that burnout thing, like just from my experience, people burn out in one of two ways, either mentally or physically. Mentally is kind of the safer burnout because you can recover, like you take a month off, 2 months, go on a sabbatical, change jobs, and you can kind of snap your head back into it. But if your body is damaged, like I had this problem with a heart condition because of burning the candle on both ends and not sleeping, right? So what, as a human, what do you have left? Like if you're trying to cram more and more in, sleep suffers, and sleep is one of the last things that you should kind of give up from a longevity perspective. But the thing that I do, Greg, to answer your question, to kind of decompress is extreme physical exercise in the form of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That is an answer I haven't had yet. I did see, though, I think on your bio that you're a brown belt.
Yeah. So BJJ is it's a grappling art that really, if you remember back in the early 90s, there was this thing called the Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC. And the first kind of winners were these Brazilian guys. Royce Gracie was one of them. And they kind of cleaned the mat with this new form, this new martial arts form, which isn't really new. It was an ancient form that migrated from Japan to Brazil. It's a long story, but it gained super popularity. It's one of the most popular amateur grappling sports, or the most popular amateur grappling sport in the world right now.
You know, I feel a little bit inferior here. It's like I've only done marathons. It's like...
Well, I couldn't do a marathon, Greg, so you're way ahead of me.
That's awesome. Well, what are your both or either really your future plans and future plans for the company?
Well, CAST has a lot to do. I mean, we're growing so quickly, and there are so many processes, and I really want to keep this personal touch with customers as we grow the business exponentially. So we've got so much. We got years and years of development on the CAST side, and I just turned 50, so I'm kind of at this interesting point in my career as to what is the world impacting thing that I want to do next. But this is going to take me a while, and we have a lot of customers and people to help in this cloud space. The reason I'm so passionate about this is not only do we save customers money, but all of these idle computers that are spinning, they're using electricity that is just can be used elsewhere in the grid. They're using cooling that is damaging the environment. So by getting our data centers globally more efficient, I really feel we're helping with our portion of the environmental battle. And it's a non-trivial CO2 emissions number, right? So this is a big mission for me and my team. And then after that, I really want to do something like, and who knows what the landscape will be like. Maybe we'll already have invented fusion by that point, and the whole landscape will change once again. But I really want to do something kind of in energy generation, storage, and environmental effects. It's a completely different industry.
Yeah. Well, that is completely ambitious. I think it's great. I love the idea about giving back and trying to do something. When I hit 50, that's about the time that I started this thing. It was about the same general idea. Wanted to give back, but on a smaller scale, not reinventing the world, which it sounds like that in some ways that you're working towards. So I appreciate that very much.
Well, you take big swings, you often have big misses, but I think I love the way Elon Musk put it. Like, when people were criticizing him about the Twitter thing, it's like, what are you doing in this Twitter? Like, it's a complete distraction. And like, he has this, real passion and vision around free speech. But his point was, look, I'm failing fast enough between my decision-making process that I know I'm going to get out of this. Like, I don't care how many mistakes I make, as long as I learn my way through them and come to a final successful outcome. So I kind of take that same fail fast approach, and not all ideas are going to work, Greg, right? Like, we all know that. And startups have a huge propensity to fail. So I feel blessed that, well, you're doing something that's successful. I feel like we're on a right trajectory here. So whenever that startup thing happens and clicks, you just got to feel blessed and happy to be part of the journey.
Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us today. It's a very interesting story and very interesting product. I'm going to have to look up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu without a doubt. just so that I'm sure, the website is cast.ai. It's pretty easy to remember. That's actually kind of awesome that your website is your exact name of the company. So it's easy to remember.
Yeah. And had I known there was all of this AI froth around, like when we picked the company name and the business model, we didn't know that there was this giant AI bubble coming and a lot of people were talking. I don't know if that helps us or hurts us, but I'm not going to shy away from what we actually do. So we just have to explain it to people.
Absolutely. Well, Leon, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Greg. Really appreciate the great questions.
Awesome. Everybody, stay safe.